Welcome in, everybody. We got One Piece, chapter 1118 here in front of us today. My name is Sai, and we are going to be breaking down the chapter, just talking a little bit about it. So with that being said, let's hop into it. So the first thing we have this week is Yamato's cover page journey yet again. Oda just can't stop giving us these cover pages back to back to back, and I'm thankful for it. Because let me tell you, as much as I love Yamato, one of my top 10 characters, in terms of favorites, I cannot wait until something bad happens. Because, for the Jamra cover page story, things went awry pretty damn quick. It started with Yonji and Niji being kidnapped. We had to go to Whole Cake Island. Blackbeard's crew showed up within 9 volumes. And here we are at volume 8 of Yamato's journey. And Yamato is just now leaving the flower capital. I'm excited. I still think crazy things are going to happen. Because one, Wano has a road poneglyph that every pirate needs to get to the One Piece. And two, there's an ancient weapon hidden here in Wano. And Vegapunk just told the world that ancient weapons exist. So Wano is going to be a key point of interest in the world of One Piece. We're going to have pirates out the wazoo coming to Wano to get what they have. Granted, not everybody knows they have a poneglyph or an ancient weapon, but if they go adventuring, they're going to find it. But yeah, I'm excited for things to go badly, even though Yamato in this cover page is smiling as she's walking away from the flower capital. So besides that though, I tried to look a little bit deeper into the background characters of this cover page, just to see if there were any distinguishable characters or notable ones back there. And it turns out, no, those are just regular Wano citizens waving Yamato goodbye. And I love that. Because, Yamato growing up never had any friends. Every friend she did have, Kaido would just execute. So seeing that civilians are cheering Yamato on and waving goodbye, it feels good. I think this is a big Yamato W. Outside of that, though, Yamato's eating a bento box and humming some sort of song while walking away. I'm excited to see how this journey goes. I want to see how the rest of Wano's doing. I feel like now that they're under Momonosuke's rule, everywhere should be flourishing. There shouldn't be a bad city that Yamato is going to have to pass by, but who knows? I've been saying this every single week now, but I do believe that we will see some Beast Pirate remnants just kind of hiding in the country still, whether it be the Toby Roppo, like Ulti in page 1, whether it be Jack the Drought, because we don't know where the hell he's at. I feel like there's a lot of characters we could potentially run into. Maybe even Hawkins. Hey, Drake came back last chapter. Maybe it's time for Basil Hawkins to make a reappearance into the story. What will he do, though? Hey, you guys tell me, because I have no clue. So now, moving on to the first page of this chapter, we have the ancient giant robot falling and sinking into the deep blue ocean. And this is something keen observers of last week's chapter may have noticed or saw coming, because going back to 1117, in the final panel where we see the robot, you actually see the ocean waves and battleships all around him. So, I'm surprised I didn't see anybody really say, hey, the robot is falling into the ocean. Nobody's really said that to me. I think we all collectively thought that the robot was just going to land on Egghead Island ground and just get back up. But no, that's not the case. The guy is going for a little swim. So while the robot is going on his little underwater adventure, we actually get a glimpse of the Hysen Denden Mushi. That bad boy is still alive and kicking. He simply has fallen to the ground now that the robot has been knocked over. And what's interesting about this is that the snail hasn't passed out. His eyes are shaded in, but he's still giving out parts of the message. He's still hitting us with the buzz, 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 the name is, and then he cuts off again. So if I were to guess, I feel like if the robot were to get out of the water and stand back up, I think this broadcast might actually still continue. Maybe that's just me being hopeful, but the snail isn't dead. Saturn didn't bash it in with a club. Marcus Mars didn't blow it into oblivion. No, the snail is still there. He's just simply fallen over. So I do feel like next chapter, if the robot gets back up out of the water, we will end up getting the rest of this message. I think it really just boils down to what part of the message are we going to get? Because last chapter we ended off with, among the D clan, there's a and then we cut off, and then come this chapter, Vegapunk's like, oh, the name is, so next chapter, Vegapunk could be talking about something unrelated to any of this, right? It looks like the message is still playing, we just can't hear it anymore. So yeah, that one's kind of up in the air, but yeah, it looks like there is someone among the D clan that is of note, which, you know, that is big, but we all knew that was coming, right? Every member of the T-Clan is and has been really important to the story, whether it be Law, Luffy, Blackbeard, Roger, Ace. Like, every D-Clan member has been absolutely integral in One Piece. So I'm curious to see how Vegapunk's message would propel one D-Clan member above all the rest, potentially. But yeah, the robot, while he's sinking down, we hear a little bit of his inner monologue. It's hard to tell whether or not this is the voice of all things projecting outwards, or if the robot is just, you know, keeping it all in his head. But he's like, wait, you know, Joyboy, where are you? A minute ago, I could have swore you were here. And yeah, it looks like this entire time, the robot was trying to make his way towards the drums of liberation. Kind of like how Zunisha was drawn to Wano, right? Zunisha just happened to show up and they're like, oh, the drums, you know, the drums, I gotta go. I think that's how the robot was last chapter. That's why he wasn't focused on the Gorosei. You know, Warkity hit him from the side. Marcus Mars was flying above him. You know, Saturn and Jupiter were just staring at him. This is why the robot didn't exactly fight back. He was too fixated on going straight to Joyboy. What's interesting about the robot's dialogue, though, is that he says, Joyboy, where did you go? I want to see you. You're here, right, Joyboy? That's strange. That is strange. And I feel like the reason why he says that's strange is because he hasn't realized yet that the Joyboy that he is hearing and sensing isn't exactly Joyboy. It's not the same Joyboy from 900 years ago. This is a new Joyboy. It is Monkey D. Luffy. I think that is why he's saying it's strange, but that's a little bit of headcanon, but I feel like that's the only real answer here. But yeah, I'm excited to see how the robot will react when he sees the new Joyboy or the reincarnation of Nika. I want to see if we get a silhouette of Nika even. That would be really cool, right? Kind of like how when people look at Luffy, they see Roger sometimes. I think we might get the same thing here with the ancient robot. And also, since he is dropping this specific dialogue, it makes me wonder what were his last memories about the Void Century or even 200 years ago, right? Because the way he's saying Joyboy, it makes it seem like Joyboy still is alive. So did the ancient robot not see Joyboy die? Did he forget that Joyboy's gone? Or perhaps is there something wrong with his memory? But then again, you know, if you woke me up 900 years or 200 years into the future, I'd be pretty lost too, so I don't exactly blame him for wondering what the hell is going on with Joyboy. So after we cut away from the robot, we see Warkity, and he is watching as the robot is sinking down into the water. And what I think is kind of funny is that all the Marines are just flabbergasted by what the hell is going on. You know, a giant boar, a giant spider, a giant bird, a giant worm. Like, the Marines are just constantly in a state of shock. And I don't blame them, right? Nobody knew that the Gorosei turned into these crazy, hideous monsters. Nobody knew that Luffy, the guy they're fighting, is this dancing sun god that can bounce the waves up and down. Like, this is terrifying if you're just a random Marine with no name and a gun. So yeah, I do wonder, though, if there will be some fallout from this dialogue. Throughout this chapter, and I guess throughout Egghead, it has been mentioned multiple times that the Marines have no idea what is going on with the Gorosei's powers. It's not common knowledge. So I do wonder if somebody will tell Big News Morgans about this. I wonder if some of the Marines will start talking about how the Gorosei are demons straight out of hell. You know, I feel like at some point this dialogue might come full circle. But like I said, I am teetering on the edge of being like a conspiracy theorist at this point while I say that. So after we get those reactions from those random Marines, we cut over back around the world and we see reactions to people witnessing that the message has now stopped. You know, it sounds kind of crazy, you know, when you really think about it. But yeah, people are like, hey, what the hell is going on with Vegapunk's message? Why did it stop? You know, what is Luffy's role in this? Who killed Vegapunk? Was it Shreya Luffy? It has to be, right? He's a pirate. The world government would never do this. You know, just people are throwing dialogue back and forth, but all of the main Luffy supporters know that Luffy wouldn't just kill Dr. Vegapunk. That's why in the Alabasta panel, we don't see Toto saying anything. We don't see Koza saying anything because they actually know what Luffy is all about. But also, hey, shout outs to Koza and Toto. I didn't think we'd actually see them, and I was hoping we would have seen them chapters ago when we got the Alabasta reactions. So it's nice that Oda is actually bringing them back this time around. And man, Koza and Toto are really funny. I absolutely love Toto, man. Just thinking back to Alabasta, he was one of the best and funniest parts. He's a key reason why Luffy was able to take down Crocodile in the first place, because Todo is the one who gave Luffy a jar of water. Crocodile broke the jar of water, and then Luffy was like, wait, you know, I can grab this guy now. So Todo, in a way, was really important back in the day, right? So yeah, I love this guy. I loved what Crocodile did to him, you know, throwing a sandstorm his way every single day at the crack of dawn. Absolutely hilarious. And yeah, you know, it's nice seeing that they are doing pretty okay. The next reaction we get in this chapter is actually Mr. Nine and Miss Monday. You know, the villains of Whiskey Peak. Granted, they weren't exactly villains. They just went undercover to help BV. And it's kind of interesting that they're still at Whiskey Peak, because Whiskey Peak is the home of many bounty hunters. You know, you would expect them to move over to Alabasta, hang out with Vivi, or maybe even just settle down in a quiet town, because they actually have a kid of their own, which I think is kind of notable. So going to when we realized that they were a couple and had a kid together, in the panel where we see it, we actually see their baby, and they're holding him up to the moon, and the baby's doing these weird, like, almost Sun God Nika-esque dance moves. And I thought that was kind of fascinating that Oda decided to bring them into this chapter, considering the fact that by the end of the chapter, we have Bonney, who's also a kid, going into Sun God Nika mode. The next reaction we get is from Leo and Rebecca again. And Leo, being the gullible tontara that he is, thinks that Luffy killed Vegapunk. And Rebecca's like, no, stop, you know, like, stop, Leo, stop assuming things, right? Even though these reaction panels didn't give us much insight as to what's going on around the world, I still do really enjoy seeing these characters. It still brings a smile to my face. So yeah, you know, shout outs to the Rebecca fans, the Leo fans, Todo fans, and Koza fans. If you guys actually exist, you got a big W this time around. So after reaction pieces ended, we cut back to everybody's favorite satellite girl, York. And the Gorosei are hitting her up and saying, hey, York, how many Vegapunks are left alive? And that is when York tells us that there are only 2 satellites left alive. Those 2 being Atlas and Lilith, which I thought was kind of fascinating, because last we saw, Edison was still alive. Yes, he was bleeding. Yes, he took like, I think it was like 78% damage to his external body, but he was still around. I wonder if this is confirmation that he's gone, because we do have to remember that York can tap into Punk records. So maybe, you know, she did some weird satellite mind games and she confirmed that, yes, Edison has indeed kicked the bucket, which I wouldn't be super surprised about. I'm more so surprised that it wasn't shown on screen. You know, Oda kind of left it up to our imaginations to see how his final moments went. But yes, we see that Atlas and Lilith are now the prime targets of the Gorosei. And the Gorosei make a pretty interesting note. They say, hey, even though we killed the main Stella body, Punk Records, the brain of Vegapunk, will continue to grow. Another instance or confirmation that even after somebody has passed away, their devil fruit powers can still exist in this realm. And the reason I bring that up is because, you know how Nami has Zeus? People were saying that because Zeus is still with Nami, that is confirmation that Big Mom has to be alive. So this kind of throws a wrench in those plans, but granted, I am still on the boat that Big Mom is alive, so this kind of works against my own personal agendas. But yeah, you know, it's cool seeing this, and it wouldn't be the first time we've seen Paramecia devil fruits still have an effect, even though the user has passed. But I guess the main question this does bring up now is whether or not the Nomi Nomi no Mi will respawn somewhere else, right? Like, will it respawn or will it wait until Punk Records is gone? Not like it actually matters. I don't think anybody else is going to eat the Nomi Nomi no Mi in the current story, but it still is something pretty fun to think about. So yes, Atlas and Lilith are now the prime targets of the Gorosei, and they're putting all of their hopes into York. You know, they are honoring that promise. They're like, hey, you know, York, she's going to be a great asset. She can continue to grow Punk Records. She can tap into Punk Records for us. And it's like, damn, dude, York really is coming out of Egghead Island with a great deal. As long as nothing else goes wrong, you know, even if Atlas and Lilith make it off of the island, York is pretty secured. I'm actually surprised. I thought the Gorosei would blame York for everything that happened here. You know, the Straw Hats interception, the whole thing with the broadcast. But no, it looks like they are still honoring York's Celestial Dragon deal. All right, so moving on to the next page, we see that Luffy, Dory, and Brogy have finally made it to the giant ship. And right when they make it aboard, they set sail immediately. Bro, we're leaving Egghead Island, man. Like, I didn't know how long it would take until we left this island behind us, but we are moving fast, dude. Like, all we have to worry about now is the Gorosei chasing us. Like, the Marines are fodder. The Vice Admirals are fodder. Like, really, it's just the Gorosei that's left. And when it comes to the Gorosei, we don't have to definitively take them down. We're not trying to kill them. We're not trying to knock the lights out of them. No, no, no. All we have to do is make sure that they don't follow us. And guess what? The only Gorosei that can fly is Mars. So effectively, we only have to take down one Gorosei member, or at least, you know, knock him away. So I think things are looking really good. But I wouldn't be surprised if Oda threw a curveball our way. And I'll talk more about the Gorosei here in a little bit. But yeah, you know, besides them though, there's nothing left on this island that we need. You know, we don't need the Seraphim. Vegapunk is dead. So, you know, that's one thing already. Everybody's on the ship. I guess the one liability right now, if I had to pick one out specifically, it would simply be Zoro and Jinbei. Because Nami's group, they're all on the ship. They're ready to go. Luffy's on the ship, all ready to go. Zoro and Jinbei are the only ones that are a little bit iffy right now. But it sounds like Zoro has a plan. You know, he did say, hey, I'll catch up with you guys. You know, Jinbei's there. Jinbei is really responsible. Jinbei's a fishman. I'm sure he can whip out something kind of wacky. So I'm not super worried for them, but I do want to see how their situation plays out. You know, like I feel like if something were to go wrong, it would be on their front, simply because they are isolated from the rest of the big groups. So yeah. Luffy makes it aboard, and what really brought a smile to my face in this panel was Bonney. Because Bonney was like, hey, Luffy, you know, like, Oda made sure to bolden out her letters. Like, she's so happy to see the Sun God finally make it back aboard. And it's kind of like meeting your hero, right? Bonnie's been looking up to Superman this entire time. And guess who just came on board? It's freaking Superman. So yeah, you know, it's almost like a childlike joy I get from watching Bonney interact with Luffy. Another thing that I thought was pretty funny is that right when Luffy boarded this ship, the first people he thought of were Usopp and Chopper. He's like, wait, Usopp, are you here? Chopper, are you there? Because he just knows that they would gush all over the ship because of how cool it is. And then we go down to the one threat from last chapter, Doll and Bluegrass. Last chapter, Doll managed to knock out Kashi, and Bluegrass seemingly blew a hole in the giant ship with the help of her tamed sea beast, but they were dealt with off screen. Yeah, I mean, Bonney has de-aged them. They are now little kids and they can't really fight us anymore. And it's kind of sad. You know, like, these guys really got done that dirty, which isn't new, right? Like, the VAs being treated like this, it's been a reoccurring thing on Egghead. You know, for me, it's a reoccurring nightmare because I thought these guys were gas when they first showed up. But after Tosa got dealt with in a single blow, these stocks, man, my hopes and dreams were shattered. And then after Tosa, Cincinnati went down, you know, a single blow from Frankie. Bonney de-aged Pomsky and kicked him. Guillotine, I don't know what happened to Guillotine. I think he just died on the side, to be honest. You know, like, all these VAs, man, they're so trash. I can't believe it. So right now, there's only 3 Vice Admirals currently standing. We have Hound. We have Urban, sorry, I almost forgot this guy's name. He's so fodder. I mean, come on. You know, Hound, Urban, and we also have Doberman left as far as the VAs go. Doberman, and here's the thing, Doberman, we don't know if he's still around. Because last we saw, Saturn ordered him to get rid of the researchers that fled Egghead Island. We don't know if he's successful. We don't know if he failed. And the reason that people are thinking he failed is because when the Giants arrived here on Egghead Island, we saw a Marine battleship has been destroyed. Was Doberman on that battleship? I don't know. You know, like, you know, if he was destroyed, we didn't see him outright. So yeah, that one is still like a mystery. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is that to all the Vice Admiral fans out there, don't lose hope. Do not lose hope just yet. We still have 2.5 Vice Admirals left, and who knows? Maybe next chapter they're gonna do something crazy. But yes, Doll and Bluegrass are out of commission because they're kids. But we do have to remember that this power doesn't last forever. Bonney herself has said that once she ages somebody up or down, it's only a matter of time until they break out of it. And of course, I'm assuming you could even use Haki to break out of it sooner. Kind of like how Law broke out of Doc Q's female illness. I feel like if Doll or Bluegrass had crazy amounts of Haki, they would be able to break out of Bonnie's spell here. So going on to the next page of the chapter, we get something that I actually laughed at, but we see Luffy saying hello to Kashi and Oimo, and Kashi is pulling off a great Weekend at Bernie's impression. You know, they're just kind of hauling around his dead body. You know, Kashi's like, you know, on the verge of death, and Luffy's like, hey guys, you know, long time no see. I thought that was pretty funny. But outside of that, though, we do get some pretty important dialogue, right? Nami hits up Sanji, and she's like, hey Sanji, we are ready to set sail thanks to Edison, but we're not going to be able to land into the sea safely. We need you guys to figure something out for us. And that kind of got me scratching my chin, because I don't think there's a lot of ways to stop the Thousand Sunny from falling. I mean, maybe Luffy and Bonnie in Gear 5th can pick up the ship and simply put it down into the ocean. I think that could happen, right? I mean, Luffy can obviously pick up a ship when he's in Gear 5th. Maybe even Oimo, Kashi, Dory, and Brogy can do it. Because the ship, you gotta remember, these guys are giants, right? The Thousand Sunny is like, it's this big. It can fit in the palm of their hand. So maybe that's going to play out. Or maybe the ancient robot will save the Thousand Sunny. Because we do have to remember that Vegapunk modeled the Vega Force 1 after the ancient robot. And when the Vega Force 1 was first introduced, it carried the Thousand Sunny out of the ocean. So maybe the ancient robot will do the inverse, and it will grab the Thousand Sunny and bring it down to the ocean. Maybe. But also, there is one thing I want everybody here to keep in mind, and that is that the Thousand Sunny isn't safe. So, going back to when we first arrived here on Nugget Island, we got a really interesting bounty poster from Frankie. You know, Frankie, his bounty poster was of the Thousand Sunny. And while that is a nice and funny joke, we do have to remember that Oda loves foreshadowing things in bounty posters, right? You know, going back to Sanji with the Vinsmoke thing, Sanji with the, oh, sorry, I forgot the name of that fake Sanji from Subodi. The guy with the roses, Davalo, something, not Damaro. Yeah, but Duval. Yeah, Duval. Sanji with Duval. We also had another interesting quirk where Frankie's bounty poster was of the General Shogun. And then come to Onigashima, Frankie fought in the General Shogun, right? Like, I feel like something is bound to happen to the Thousand Sunny based on Frankie's bounty poster. So if something were to happen, I feel like it is going to be because of this plot point right here. If I had to take a guess as to what might happen to the Thousand Sunny, I would guess that it is going to get severely damaged, which isn't a bad thing because the place we're going to is Elbaf. And a lot of people have been speculating for years now that Elbaf is the home of the Atom Tree, which is the same material that the Thousand Sunny is made of. And also, you know, speaking of ships, I talk about this a lot as well. You know, I'm kind of like a broken record again, but a lot of ships in this final saga have been destroyed. Bonnie's ship was destroyed off screen. Law's ship was destroyed. Kid's ship was destroyed. Garb's ship almost got destroyed, right? So the fact that the Thousand Sunny is quote unquote in danger because it's about to fall from a sky island, I feel like that is going to be integral, for lack of a better word. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about the Thousand Sunny. Who do you think will save the Thousand Sunny? Or do you think, no, nobody's going to be able to save the Thousand Sunny because we are going to be too damn focused on the Gorosei? Speaking of the Gorosei, though, that is when we see Marcus Mars is approaching from afar. Kind of rhymed a little bit, huh? So yeah, Marcus Mars is the first Gorosei to show up and run smoke against the Straw Hats and the Giants, and we get something pretty cool. I mean, these Giants are crazy. First off, I want to say these Giants are crazy. So Marcus Mars shoots a fire beam or a fire blast, and it's awesome, but what's even more awesome is the fact that the Giants are able to block it. Yo, what the hell are they feeding these guys? What are these shields made of to where it can block an attack from Marcus Mars? Dude, going back to the Labo phase, Marcus Mars used this exact same blast attack, or fire breath, whatever you want to call it, really. I wish the Gorosei, you know, gave these attacks names, but either way, that's besides the point. these giants were able to block an attack that destroyed multiple buildings. Brother, you know, the most reaction we got from these giants is that they said, oh my god, that's a little bit hot. Man, these giants, they just keep on looking better and better each chapter. And with these giants being able to block Marcus's attack, god, you know, I'm excited to see what the heavy hitters of Elbaf will end up looking like, man, because, you know, Big Mom wasn't wrong. You know, Big Mom said whoever can control the giants of Elbaf might as well rule the world. I don't think she was joking. I really don't think she was joking. So while Marcus Mars is fighting off some giant fodder, we see that Luffy has made himself at home within the ship's kitchen. And it's pretty funny that Dory and Brogy warned the chef of the crew that Luffy is a big eater and that he'll be pretty much destroying the entire pantry. But yeah, the giant's like, hey, you know, Luffy, I was gonna bring it outside for you. But Luffy was like, yeah, we don't got time for that. You know, I gotta eat as fast as possible. You know, he knows that the Gorosei are on their way. He could probably sense them. He probably just used common sense as well, and he wants to get back out to that battlefield ASAP. So even though the giants, by the way, even though they blocked Marcus's fire attack, they did mention that they now have to grab some water to put out the fire that is spreading around the ship. And something that did strike me as a little bit odd is that Sanji's kind of just standing and watching the giants fight this battle and watching everybody do things. And I feel like that's very un-Sanji-like, right? I mean, granted, a woman is not in danger, so maybe Sanji's spidey senses didn't start tingling yet. But yeah, you see Sanji, he's kind of just like looking around, assessing the situation, and I'm like, yo, Sanji, you know, like you're one of the few characters that can fly, brother. And as far as Mars's final matchup goes, if they do end up fighting the Straw Hats, you know, in these 1v1 or 2v1 battles, I would put Sanji against Marcus Mars. So I do want to see if Sanji will eventually fight Marcus, or at least, you know, kick him away like the bird he is. So now, going on a little bit further, we see that Luffy has finally finished up his meal, and he is back already in his Gear 5th Sun God Nika form. And he tells Bonney, hey, it's time to gear up, brother. And it is absolutely insane, the amount of, I don't know if this is the correct use of aura, but the aura that Luffy exudes. Because when he shows up, you see the sea levels, man. They're bouncing, they're rocking. The Marines are wondering what the hell is going on. Wait, what did one Marine say? They said, hey, don't tell me this is ... We just learned about this. The sea levels are rising. This is bad. Like, dude, what Luffy is doing here is akin to that of an ancient weapon, you know? So it's pretty funny seeing that happen. You know, the drums of liberation are also beating in the background. Dory and Brogy are busting a move. And they say something kind of interesting too, right? So we see them dancing, and Dory says, hey, this is the rhythm of the feast. And Brogy says, fool, don't just start dancing. We have to put out the fire. But while Brogy is saying that, he's also dancing too. So yeah, you know, that again is just showing us that once we hit Elbaf, we're going to be getting a lot of random Sun God Nika lore. So Luffy runs up to Bonney and he's like, hey, come on, Bonney, you want to kick their ass, right? Bonney says that's impossible for me because that form is ... And Luffy says, I don't understand how your power works, but I feel that you can do it. And then that is when we get a little bit of a flashback, right? Where Luffy, at the beginning of Egghead, told Bonney that the white form that he goes into is his form where he's the most free. So now Bonney, with that context and with Luffy's inspiration behind her, she uses distorted future. And she goes into the future where she is the most free. And in that final page, man, in that final page, we see Bonney and Luffy both fifth up. Nah, that's a horrible way to put it. They're both in their Sun God Nika forms, and they're ready to tackle the Gorosei. One great detail that I absolutely loved about this final page, though, has to be the fact that Kuma is watching his daughter do this, right? In the top right panel, we have Kuma, you know, he's still unconscious, he's still kind of dead, but he's looking up, and then he has a flashback. You know, it looks like Kuma is having a flashback where he's talking about Bonney and how he is taking the responsibility to raise her. And then we cut to the present, and it's like, brother, there's your daughter. There's your daughter in Sun God Nika mode. There's the hero that you've saved. That is the guy you've been looking for. Like, there's so much, man. It fires from all angles. And I love that Kuma, even though he's not 100% here, I love that Kuma is able to witness these events. One cool nod about Bonney, though, being in Gear 5th. I'll talk a lot about Bonney here in a second, but the first thing that really stands out to everybody is the fact that she's doing the exact same pose that Luffy did back in Volume 106, which is the iconic Astro Boy pose. And then Luffy, I'm not a big fan of Luffy's pose. I'm not gonna lie. You know, this is the Onigashima pose where he first went Gear 5th. It's not my favorite, you know, because, you know, I want to see more of Luffy and he's kind of covering the face. We're getting this weird crotch angle. But yeah, you know, we got two Nikas here and they are ready to square off against the Gorosei. And hey, it might be presumptuous of me to say, but I don't think the Gorosei stand a chance, right? I mean, Luffy, Dory, and Brogy, oh my god. They didn't beat them, but they knocked back Jupiter, they knocked back Saturn, and they didn't knock back Warcutti, but they did manage to run away from him at the very least. So it's like, yo, you add in one more Nika? Oh my god, it's over. It's over. And plus, Sanji's here, Frankie's here. You know, Atlas isn't a fighter, but Atlas is here. We got a bunch of giant fodder here as well. Like, oh man, the matchup is heavily skewed towards the Straw Hats, in my opinion. But with all that being said, though, we do have to remember that there is a caveat here. And that is the fact that we do not know how to permanently damage the Gorosei. We can knock them back into Kingdom Come. We can cut off their limbs, but they're just going to regenerate. But thankfully, though, since we have set sail, I feel like if we were to knock them back, they would take too long to regenerate, and we would be able to escape safe and sound. As long as they can't swim. We don't know how they interact with seawater yet, so I think this will be a very interesting experiment, for lack of a better word. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how this is going to go. Right now, only Marcus Mars is attacking the giant ship, but based on the paneling of the last page, it looks like Warcutti and Jupiter are now on the move, and they are closing in on Luffy and Bonney. Granted, they don't know what the hell is going on, right? You know, like, in the panel, they're like, wait, something strange is afoot, right? Like, I doubt that they're expecting a second Nika to be present, right? Like, oh, man. Dude, the minute the Gorosei get back home to Marie Joie, I promise you, they are going to be bullying Saturn. Saturn is the one who gave Bonney these abilities, or at least experimented on Ginny, which led to Bonney having these abilities. Like, dude, I'd look at Saturn and I'd be like, yo, this is all your fault. First, you let Vegapunk do whatever you want. And then two, you gave Bonney Sun God Nika powers. Dude, what are you up to? But, you know, in a different light, though, this could also be a giant Saturn W, right? Because if Saturn is able to replicate powers that give somebody Sun God Nika abilities, then maybe Saturn will use this in nefarious manners. Maybe Saturn will start experimenting more on people, and we could have an army of Sun God Nikas we'll be fighting in the future. But of course, that's like a cursed timeline. Right now, though, with Bonney going into this distorted future, I have seen a lot of debate online surrounding this. Whether this came out of nowhere, whether it's a retcon, you know, whether or not this cheapens Luffy's Sun God Nika form. Man, people are spewing everything out there. And personally, I'm pretty okay with it. I actually really like it, and this is something that I've been talking about for a while now. You know, going back all the way to when we first saw Bonney use Gear 3rd, and then later use Gear 3rd on Saturn, it's like, yo, like, Bonney being able to tap into the Sun God Nika timeline means that she'll eventually be able to become Sun God Nika. The only reason she didn't do this earlier is because she didn't know what Sun God Nika looked like or how he even fights. But now that she has Luffy to base her abilities off of, she can copy him to a T. Granted, though, you know, Bonney doesn't have Conqueror's Haki. Bonney doesn't have Ryuo. You know, she doesn't have Conqueror's Coding. She doesn't have Future Sight. So even though she has this Sun God Nika mode, she's not the most busted character in existence. She's merely a copy of Sun God Nika. And another thing to keep in mind about Bonney's transformation is that these transformations notoriously have not lasted that long. When Bonney used Gear 3rd, it was for a single punch. When Bonney used Gear 3rd against Saturn, it was a single punch. You know, when Bonney used the Buccaneer form, it was for a single page, right? Like, Bonney has not been able to tap into the distorted futures for that long. So, Luffy right now, he has I think it's like a 5 or 10 minute timer on Gear 5th. Bonney probably has a 1 minute timer. Her stamina is still that of a 12-year-old. So I think there's a lot of things that differentiate Sun God Nika Luffy from Sun God Nika Bonney. Oh yeah, another thing that just completely slipped my mind, but Bonney doesn't even know how to use the Gomu Gomu no Mi effectively. Like every time we've seen Bonney, she's only thrown regular punches. She hasn't used a Gatling. She hasn't used a rifle, a bazooka. She hasn't used a red rock. I feel like there's going to be a lot of abilities that are going to be missing from Bonnie's moveset. And that's where Luffy's going to fill in the gaps, right? Because Luffy right now is kind of like Bonnie's mentor. It's like Creed. We got Sylvester Stallone coaching him. And it's really cool to see. And I really do enjoy this dynamic a lot. Very rarely, actually almost never, have we seen Luffy coach somebody when it comes to fighting. So I think by having Bonney along the Straw Hat crew, I feel like this will open up a brand new side of Luffy entirely. And I am open for it. So now, as far as this power being out of nowhere, because I have heard people talk about this, it's not out of nowhere. I mean, Saturn pretty much perfectly explained how Bonnie's powers actually work. She taps into a distorted future. She can only tap into futures that she perceives as possible. So, what does she do? She taps into a Nika-ish future because she believes in Sun God Nika. The reason why it didn't work against Saturn is because her faith in Sun God Nika was wavering. As Saturn said in that chapter, the more you realize the truth of the matter, the less you're able to use your distorted future. A lot of people take that panel specifically and they misinterpret it to oblivion. So the reason why Saturn says that is because he does not want her to go Sun God Nika mode. Saturn knows that Sun God Nika actually exists. He's looking at Sun God Nika in that very same page. He talks about Sun God Nika in his monologue. The reason why his monologue in his head and what he says to Bonney are so different is because he doesn't want Bonney to use these powers. So that is where I think people get tripped up. But yes, now that Bonney knows that Sun God Nika is real, now that she knows how he fights, what he looks like, she can copy it to a T. The only thing that is limiting Bonney right now is her imagination. But granted, she's a 12-year-old kid. And I would argue that Bonney, being a 12-year-old kid, has a crazy imagination. I wouldn't be surprised if, just like how I mentioned that Luffy will teach Bonney how to fight, I feel like Bonney will teach Luffy brand new abilities that Luffy hasn't even thought of. I feel like they can both grow together, and it's going to be a really, really fun dynamic in my eyes. Like I said, I've seen many people saying that they don't like this form, and that's an opinion, and I think that's totally fine. If you don't like Bonney going Sun God Nika, that's fine by me. But to say it came out of nowhere, it did it, man. It's been in our eyes for this entire time. And I've talked about this one too, but Bonney, her flower, as quoted in Oda's SBS, is a freesia. Luffy's was a sunflower. The title of the chapter, this chapter, is called I'm Free. It's almost like Oda was foreshadowing this whole thing the entire time. Like, the signs were there, we just had to pick up on them. But yeah, besides that though, I've seen people saying that this form is cheap, it's a knockoff, it undermines everything Luffy has been through in the past 25 years. I don't subscribe to any of those notions. I really don't. I mean, Bonnie's Devil Fruit allow her to manipulate timelines. So if that's the case, why wouldn't she be able to manipulate Luffy's timeline or tap into it? Right? It's like if there was a Devil Fruit out there that allows you to copy other Devil Fruits. Why would Luffy's be special, right? Like, yes, it is a mythical sun god Devil Fruit, but it's still a Devil Fruit, right? You should still be able to copy it to an extent. Is it a perfect copy? Probably not, because, there are a lot of things that separate Luffy and Bonney, but being able to do this isn't that crazy at the end of the day. It's kind of like how Law's ability, his Ope Ope no Mi allows him to, awaken and use our room, which is effectively Corazone's Devil Fruit. We've even seen other Devil Fruits be straight up upgrades from those of the past. Like, that's just kind of how it is. Like, I don't think this is that shocking or that absurd. Like, I feel like this does make a lot of sense. But yeah, like, where do you guys fall on this one? Are you a fan of Sun God Nika Bonney? Or no, do you still believe that this just cheapens Luffy's ability? Do you think, Bonney shouldn't be able to do this? Let me know all your thoughts down below. But yeah, now that Bonney is able to do this, we have to look into the future, right? How will Bonney take this power and upgrade it later, right? Because right now, you have to remember that Bonney's Devil Fruit is not even awakened. When you awaken, you become able to affect your surroundings with your powers. So who's to say that once Bonney awakens the Toshi Toshi no Mi, that she's able to give multiple people Sun God Nika forms? We saw that she was able to tap into a different timeline with Luffy, right? When Luffy and Bonney were running away from the Kuma police bot, Bonney changed Luffy into a distorted future. It was one of the possible timelines, or at least that's what it said in the dialogue box. So it's like, Bonney's already been doing this, man. Like, all she has to do is upgrade her powers a little bit, hone in, lock in, and then boom, we could get a Sun God Nika Zoro, Sun God Nika Usopp, Sun God Nika Frankie. Like, it's very, very possible. And if you're not a fan of Bonney going Sun God Nika, then I do in a way feel bad, because we're just gonna get more of this, brother. We're just gonna get more of this. And personally, I'm eating it up, man. Like I said, this is something that a lot of people have been talking about for a while now, and it finally is here in the manga. And hey, I'm just gonna say it right here, but this isn't even the first time somebody has brought this idea to the table, because this has been around ever since Fishman Island. Back when we fought Hody Jones, he took those Tamate Bako Box pills, and after he took so many of the energy steroids, his hair became white and his eyes became red. And it reminds us of the minks. The minks, when they go Sulong form, their hair becomes white and their eyes become red. I feel like by the end of the story, or at least the final war, we're going to get multiple people in this white-haired, red-eyed form, whether it be a Sun God Nika transformation, a Sulong transformation, a steroid transformation. I feel like we're all going to have people like Bonney and Nika on our side fighting. That's just how I feel. I feel like Oda's been setting this up for a long while now, and is it like Naruto and how he gave out the Nine-Tails cloak? Yeah, but is there anything wrong with that? Honestly, I personally don't think so. Like back when that happened, back in I think 2013, 2014, I had no problems. I thought that was actually pretty damn cool. And if Luffy ends up doing that with Sun God Nika mode, or Bonney doing that with Sun God Nika mode, you'd hear no complaints from me, to be honest. So outside of Bonney, though, outside of all that stuff, it's time to talk about that ancient robot. Because at the end of the chapter, as Luffy's heartbeat is ringing around Egghead Island, the ancient robot says he's here, in reference to Joyboy. So this robot, man, I can see it. Next chapter, he's gonna rise from the sea and do something. It's hard, right? Because I would like to imagine that the robot would fight off the Gorosei, and he would be a key reason why we would get off of this island safely. But right now, he's kind of just focused on Joyboy. He just wants to see his old man in action. So I'm kind of curious, will Luffy even be able to communicate with the giant? Will it talk with the voice of all things? Will it speak out loud? We're not exactly sure. There's still a lot of questions when it comes to this robot. Personally, I do think that Luffy will talk to it. Maybe Luffy will give him a silly nickname. Because, going back to when Luffy first saw the robot, he called him Robonosuke. And it kind of reminded me of Momonosuke, obviously the Nosuke part. And Momonosuke was the one who ordered Zunisha to beat up Jack. So maybe that's some weird, threaded foreshadowing where Luffy's going to command the robot to fight the Gorosei. But I don't know, right? Will Luffy be like, hey, robot, you're alive? How's it going? Help us fight. I can't imagine Luffy giving orders. He doesn't really seem like that type of guy. So I'm really interested to see how that dialogue will go down. So now, the last couple of things I want to talk about kind of revolve around the Gorosei and how they might combat the Straw Hats, right? So Warkody and Jupiter are making their way over here. And while they are more or less locked on land, I do feel like Jupiter's sucking abilities will finally come into play in a meaningful way, right? Because Jupiter, he just loves sucking everything in. And with the giant ship being off the coast of Egghead Island now, I feel like Jupiter could just You know, he could suck really hard and start bringing the ship backwards, making it to where Luffy and Bonney have to knock Jupiter down. And I would really enjoy that, where I want to see the Gorosei put up an actual fight before we just flee the battle. So I think Jupiter could put in some work there. As far as Warkity goes, I'm not super sure. We do know that Warkity has sword tusk, so maybe he'll whip out the swords and like send a Mihawk Zoro flying sword attack off to the giant ship, but that's like headcanon-y, so I don't know about that one. You know, we haven't seen him do that yet. Another thing that the Gorosei could do is that maybe Mars lands on the ship and he uses the summoning circle. I think that'd be pretty awesome too, right? Imagine they summon all the Gorosei on the ship so you can't escape. I think that'd be pretty cool. Another thing that we haven't seen from the Gorosei yet are hybrid human forms. Well, you know, I don't want to say that wrongly. We've seen Saturn do it. You know, we saw Saturn's half human, half Gyuki form, but we haven't seen any of the other Gorosei do that. Oh, wait, I lied again. Venus has done it. Venus and Saturn have done it. But as far as Jupiter, Warkity, and Mars, we haven't seen it. And those I'm confident on. So yeah, that could be a pretty cool plot point. As far as Venus and Saturn goes, one cool thing about Venus is that we actually see him in this chapter. In the panel where we see Nami talking to Sanji, you can actually see Venus just hiding in the background. Still fighting Zoro and Jinbei, of course. So now, last person to talk about is Saturn. So Saturn has already fought Nami's group beforehand, and he was taking a lot of blows. Like, you know, granted, he can regenerate, but, you know, the Straw Hats were putting in some work there. They weren't being held down by his eyesight. I don't know why. So maybe he whips that ability out again. Maybe the Thousand Sunny tries to escape, but he ends up using his eye powers and he stops the ship halfway. Maybe, as a spider should, he whips out spider webs and stops the ship from flying off. I feel like Saturn could finally look pretty cool here, but like I said, that is yet to be seen. But outside of that, though, those are my thoughts on the Gorosei. Those are my thoughts on Bonney, the Giants, and everything about this chapter. Let me know what you think down below. What do you think about Bonney? You know, what do you think about the Gorosei, the ancient robot, the message? I would love to hear all your thoughts down below. And hey, there is no break next week. So we're going to be back in action, guys. We're going to be back in action, and we're going to see what Bonney is going to be truly capable of. But with that being said, my name is Sai. I'm just a guy with the camera, and I am signing out. Peace.